so far avoided to identify Israel by its name. Israel and its ever-increasing nuclear arsenal beyond reproach, uncontrolled, uninspected. We all know these things, yet we all remain silent, fearful of being labeled anti-Semitic, hateful, worse. Considering Germany's past, these labels stick, so we call it business, reparations, take your pick. As we deliver yet another submarine, as we provide to Israel the means to deliver annihilation, I say what must be said. Why did I stay silent until now? Because I'm German, of course. I'm tainted by a stain I cannot wash out. I'm silent because I want so badly to make it right, to put my sins in the past and leave them silently there. Why did I wait to say it until now and write these words with the last of my ink, declaring that Israel threatens world peace? Because it is true and it must be said. Tomorrow will be too late. We Germans now carry a new burden of sin on our shoulders through the weapons we have sold. We are helping to carry out this foreseeable tragedy. No excuse will remove our stain of complicity. It must be said. I won't be silent. I've had enough of the hypocrisy.
Unrest Radio.
Recorded November 5th, 2023. First of all, can you just give us a short introduction about yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Hefets. I was born in Israel, in the south of Israel, in a place called Beersheba. Used to be Beersheba, a Palestinian place before I was born. And I grew up there to a, I would say, normal Zionistic family, like all families in Israel, more or less. And when I was 37, I had a normal Israeli life, which means go to school, go to the army, unfortunately, go to university. And when I say normal, it's not really normal. I mean, it's normal for white Jews. And white Jews in Israel, it means Ashkenazi Jews, Jews that came, that are not Mizrahis. It means that they didn't come from Arab or Muslim countries. So I do come from such a family, but my father's father came from Russia, and he brought us the very important name Hefets, which is an Ashkenazi name, so I was considered to be Ashkenazi. Therefore, I also reached university. That's not the case with most Mizrahi Jews. And when I was 37, I moved to Berlin. That was during the second Intifada. It was clear to me that the political perspective is not going to be good. I saw the development in the Israeli society already before, and how totalitarian the state of mind and the political structure is, and how much it becomes more and more totalitarian. So I moved with my family to Berlin when I was 37, and I started a new career and learned new language. I was a migrant, but of course a very privileged migrant. And I work now in Berlin, Neukölln. As psychoanalyst, I have my own practice there, my own office.
Okay, thank you for this introduction. And I think you have been go through like with our questionnaire that we sent to you via email. So we will discuss accordingly, and maybe if we have some time left, then we will ask some following question. So the first question I would like to ask, like, how far back we can go to trace the history of the instrumentalization of accusation of antisemitism for political reason in post-war Germany?
Well, I think it started together in the world and in post-war Germany. But for Germany, I think that the unification when the wall was falling was a moment which is important for German discourse because it creates more normality. For Germany, Berlin became the capital again, which wasn't the case before. And the Americans were not formally, not anymore the controlling power. So I think it starts to mark the kind of, but it is of course a process that started after the war of kind of trying to normalize Germany as a normal state, which was not the case before. And then 2008, when Angela Merkel was in Jerusalem and said that the security of Israel is part of Germany's Staatsräson, I mean the reason of the state of Germany, it was strengthened because then Israel was kind of, I think also in psychoanalytical terms, I think that when Germany says, and the politicians in Germany are claiming that all the time, that Israel is part of Germany, Israel used to be the Jews for Germany. It was not possible, and it is impossible, to ask for forgiveness for the genocide that the Germans did to the Jews. So Germany started already after the war to treat Israel as the address for the forgiveness and normalization of Germany. And therefore, Adenauer started already to negotiate with Israel and to have diplomatic relationship with Israel. And it was clear also when he negotiated with Ben-Gurion, he was then the prime minister, who was for that because Israel needed the money. So it was a negotiation. Ben-Gurion knew that, for example, Globke, which is a Nazi, was working with Adenauer. But he said, okay, I mean, I will swallow that, or that was kind of a treaty between them in order to get the money. There was a lot of objection to that in Israel. Menachem Begin, who was there in the opposition, was against it because they said, I mean, our families are not to be sold and to be instrumentalized, but Realpolitik was winning at that time. So there was a start of this process. And it goes through many stages, but I think that the fall of the wall, the unification of Germany, and then 2008, and with this time also the economical power that Germany gained all the time, and the fact that after dealing with the Jews in Israel as a Jews object, ignoring the fact that only 40% of the Jews are living in Israel, until now, I think it became, from a negotiation, it became to swallowing Israel. So Israel became part of Germany, and Germans speak like they are Jews. And therefore they can tell also other Jews, if they are not pro-Israeli or Zionistic, that they are not real Jews, because they claim to be the Jews now. Israel is part of them, and the Jews are part of Germany. And I think it goes hand in hand with 9/11 and the politics of Israel, because after 9/11, which is quite similar to the 7th of October now, the Muslims were the ones to carry the bad guy in the world, which was before, the Russians or other people. or other groups. And the history started for the USA in 9/11. There was nothing before. It was kind of something bad happened to us and fell from the sky on us. We did nothing. We are innocent. And we don't understand why people hate America. And this is the case also with Israel now. It was very convenient also for Israel to have this politics of the bad Muslims, because this way they could frame the colonial and apartheid regime of Israel and the objection to that and the resistance to that as antisemitism, because if Palestinian, Arabs, whatever hate us because we are just Jews, it's not because what we did or what we do. And therefore, you cannot also really have a solution to that. You know, racism means that you are being hated because of what you are. And therefore, it doesn't matter what you do. It's not about doing, it's about being. And that was very convenient to Israel to frame the discourse like that. It's not about we are stealing the land and the life of Palestinian people and resources and having an apartheid and suppression of Palestinian rights. It's about they hate us anyhow just because we are Jews, not because of what we did. And I think at that point, from that point on, it was very easy for Israel to market this idea. And then it was not only the Arab world, it was also Iran, which is as a Muslim republic against Israel, and you could easily frame the hate against Israel and the resistance without hate or with hate as something which has to do with the being of Jews, which is of course not the case, because Israel tries also to identify Jews with Israel, and therefore you can say also and conflate between the two and say if someone says something against Israel, it's something against Jews as Jews.
You gave us a very nice overview of the structural issue, and you also told us your life story at the beginning to connect them a bit. When you arrived in Germany, what was the general atmosphere and what was your experience or the experience of the various groups you interacted with? Did you evolve your positions by seeing the general attitude towards the Palestinian people, towards the unconditional support towards Israel, or was it also through contact with various Palestinian activists and so forth? Could they talk at the time? I mean, we've gone a long way forward, but there's still a long path to go. I'm especially reminded about the tragic example of Ionuț and Saad, who visited France, and he was basically a non-person because nobody even wanted to talk to him about the issue of his people.
Mm. Well, I came 2002 to Germany, and at that point I was already a bit politically active in Israel. But it was very minor because I was afraid to lose my work. And I was the one who was supporting the family at that time. So I felt how much the discourse and the space I have to talk become narrow and narrow. I think this is something that pushed me also outside of Israel. When I came to Germany, it was very liberating for me. Because first of all, I met Palestinians. Really for the first time of my life, I think, because Israel is very segregated. And where I grew up, I didn't have any contact to Palestinian, hardly. I mean, my father had, because he worked with Palestinians from Gaza who came to us and visit our house here and there. But it's not that I was in school with Palestinian people or Bedouin people. It's very segregated. They have their own schools and there is no contact. There is also segregation in Israel between Ashkenazi children and non-Ashkenazi children, Mizrahis, yeah, but there is more mixture in that than with Palestinian anyhow. And anyhow, where I grew up, it was much more mixed, in the Jewish society. And when I came to Germany, it was liberated because I could say in Germany things that I couldn't say in Israel. I could say, I wanted to leave Israel because I didn't want that my children will go to the army. Or I think in Israel should be a one state when all people have the same rights. It considered to be very normal because it was also very German. Also, the German people I met didn't want their children to go to the army. Or were for basic human rights to all people equal rights. So it wasn't that big issue for them. And it was a relief for me to be in a place like that. But this is not the case now in Germany, because the development in Germany, the German society at that time was much more anti-militaristic, and there were more people which were against the USA politic. I was with 1 million people marching in Berlin against the war in Iraq. And Germany didn't join at that time to this war. It looks today like a science fiction when Germany is so militarized and nationalistic. So my experience was, I became, after I learned the language, the German language, I became more and more active also among Germans. At that time, when, for example, I was in a place where anti-Germans were anti-Deutsch, and I spoke critically about Israel, they used to stand up and go away because they had this idea that if a Jew and an Israeli is saying something, they are not allowed to contradict. So they couldn't hear that because they are very philo-Semitic and they think that Israel is the best place in the world, but they left. They got out and left. With the time, they became much more powered. They became much more aggressive, together with a general tendency in German society, which is less and less inhibited. The aggression in Germany was much more inhibited when I came, and it becomes less and less the case, and racism is much more open. So some years after, I saw how many Jews and Israelis that were speaking about Israel were considered to be anti-Semitic by white Germans, with grandparents that were Nazis. Yeah. So I experienced more and more this kind of narrowing of the space, which I also experienced in Israel before I left. I hope it answers your question.
Does any famous example of the instrumentalization of anti-Semitism comes to your mind in the recent years? It can be like a more well-known example, or maybe something you faced with yourself or some of the groups you know.
Well, it started actually, what I know, started actually 2009. And that was also, I wrote about it, an article in the Taz. Today, I am persona non grata there. I have no chance to publish something like that. But at that time, the people that managed this journal, this newspaper, were much more activists, much more leftist, much more critical and anti-establishment than the people today. And I called it. It was an article that made a lot of noise, high impact article it was, because I dared to touch this sacred Holocaust issue. And I started it with the fact that three cancellations. These were the three first cancellations in Germany. One of Norman Finkelstein, who is a son of Holocaust survivors, that was cancelled being anti-Semitic or something like that. Another one, Ilan Pape, who's also coming from a German family of his parents or grandparents, his parents had to leave Germany because of the Nazis. And Hayo Meyer, who is also, he himself was a Holocaust survivor. And I think he survived also Auschwitz. So Germans, that was the first time the Germans there, and that was also the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, I mean, from the left, yeah, that cancelled three people that were either Holocaust survivors themselves or children of Holocaust survivor, cancelling them and don't let them speak in Germany because they were critical of Israel. that was a turning point. And then I wrote about the instrumentalization of the Holocaust in order to shut up these people. It was still possible to write about it, and I talked about this instrumentalization in Germany that treats the Holocaust as something mythical, like it didn't really happen in reality. It was decontextualized, became part of out of history, like it wasn't done by people, which is also something very relieving from Germans. Like, it wasn't us. It wasn't part of history. It's sacred. Therefore, you're not allowed to touch it. This is also what is done in Israel. And in Israel, people, I think they are still doing that. They are taking 16 years old, 17 years old, school classes to 7 concentration camps in 10 days. And then they end this tour in Prague or something like that. Then they drink a lot, they have sex, they have whatever, but they are indoctrinated there to be kind of put into this state of mind of being the victims in the Holocaust with a nationalist touch, with the lesson of it should never happen again, and therefore we have to defend Israel against the Palestinians and the Arabs who wants to destroy us and to annihilate us, and these are the new Nazis. So they put these young people in a kind of psychotic state of mind in which they can undo the Holocaust, in that sense that if they will fight now the Palestinians, they can fight and not be slaughtered like they were during the Holocaust. Ehud Barak, for example, who was prime minister of Israel, I think it was when it was the 60 years of the Befreiung, the liberation of Auschwitz. The Israeli army was there in Auschwitz, and he said, "We came 60 years too late." Yeah, so this is the psychotic idea of living the past, not remembering the past and considering that like a past, but living it. And this is also what Germany is doing. And for Germany, it's also very relieving because it's not the Germans, it's the Muslims, it's the Palestinians. They are the bad guys. And this is a narrative that Israel is already trying to put since long time. If you look, for example, in the Encyclopedia of the Holocaust in Israel, that the Yad Vashem, that's the main institution that is responsible for the memory culture of the Holocaust in Israel, already in their encyclopedia, the value of Haj Amin al-Husseini, who was the Palestinian mufti at that time, and he had contacts with Hitler, but it was a minor thing. It's not that it was very important for the history of the Holocaust, but the value of him and how many pages were dedicated to that, it's more than the pages that were dedicated to a very big Nazi, Rudolf Hess. I think he was the commander of Auschwitz. Yeah. So there are many comparisons in trying to frame the existence of Israel as a Holocaust place, not as a result of the Holocaust, but as a state of mind of the living in Israel. For example, one of the foreign ministers of Israel, Abba Eben, said after someone talked about that Israel has to retreat from the West Bank and the Gaza Bank, he said it's not possible. These are Auschwitz borders for Israel. Or talking about other Palestinians in terms of Nazis and comparing them to Nazis, until Benjamin Netanyahu said not long ago that it was actually the Mufti, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who gave Hitler the idea to annihilate the Jews. So this is a long process trying to portray the Palestinians as the one who are the Nazis of today. And therefore it justifies also the annihilation of the Palestinians, because if they are the Nazis, who is the prototype of the bad and evil, then of course you don't have to talk with them, you don't have to give them rights. They are the bad guys. It's not that we did something to them. Of course, it's very perverse, this discussion, but this is what Israel is trying to do in cooperation also with the US and Germany, because it serves their interest.
Just wanted to ask, the thing you described, this instrumentalization, is it a thing that's specific to this hard right turn of the Israel government in the last few decades? Because maybe it's a fake impression. Labor was, of course, horrible towards the Palestinians, but was all more cold, calculated, distant. Or can this already be traced back to those more social democratic moments in Israeli history?
Yeah. Well, I think it started with the Labour Party. It's easy to think that, the right wing are the bad guys. But this is Abba Eban, for example, what I described. He came from the Labour Party. And the Labour Party was not really a socialist party. It was socialist for Jews, and only for Jews who were Ashkenazi. So the moment you are saying this is socialism for one ethnic group, then it's not really socialism. It's not the idea of socialism. And the Labour Party, that's the party who actually started with the settlement idea, who financed the settlers that went to the West Bank and to Gaza and to the Golan Heights, and they supported them. And the settlers saying, we are actually the sons of these pioneers that came and established and founded Israel in the Labour Party. The Labour Party started also with the neoliberal economic policy of Israel. It's not something that the right started. But of course that Benjamin Netanyahu especially was someone who facilitated that. Netanyahu is someone who is also have many connections to the Labour Party. Ehud Barak and Netanyahu were in the same unit in the army. And Netanyahu went then to the MIT and he got the Fulbright stipendium. The Fulbright stipendium is dedicated to people non-American that are coming to American universities, usually Ivy League universities, and they are financed there under the condition that they are not allowed to stay in the United States. The idea is that they will propagate the US idea and economical interest, the Chicago School of Economy in the world. So he had very good contacts to conservatives circles in the USA. Therefore, he had also good contacts to the Trump administration, and he was forcing this neoliberal policy in Israel, which leads also to the catastrophe of 7th October, because on that day, Israel was a failed state. I mean, and that is because of colonial ideas, which makes the colonial person or a colonial power to be at some point, very disavowing and thinking that he can control everything. And Israel had good reason to think like that, because there was no objection really to Israel in the Western world. Of course, in the South global, a lot of objection, but they are not in power. So Israel could do whatever it did and oppress Palestinians and have an apartheid regime and to oppress all objection against this in the United Nations, in other places in the world, without paying a price for that. In contradiction to that, actually, they thrived economically, at least the upper classes in Israel. And parallel to that, there was a very massive neoliberal economic power which dismantled most of the social welfare organization, and also other organizations like the army. In a neoliberal world, you don't try to think about the future. You have, for example, reserves which are very limited. If you don't need antibiotics now, then you don't buy it. You work according to Nachfrage, and I mean how much people want and how much you have to deliver. I don't remember the term now in English, sorry. So the moment there is no war, you don't need maybe too many vehicles for that, or helmets and all that stuff. So on 7th October, it was clear soldiers came to the places of near Gaza, to the settlements, the Jewish settlements near Gaza, near the border. It took them a long time to reach there. There was no public transportation. Parents brought their children with their own vehicles to these places. I saw also in the first days really Facebook posts of people saying, 5 friends of mine are going to the army now. They don't have helms. Do you know where can I get helms for them? So during this privatization, the state really dismantled its responsibility for everything. So people were left alone, and the civil society had to organize all the things. No food in hospitals, for example. So there were Facebook posts saying, I mean, who can cook now for a hospital in Ashkelon? We don't have enough food for the staff and for the patients. So these are actually tasks for the state that civil society took because the state failed totally on that day. And they had to cover up for that for a long time. And until now, there are many conspiracy theories, but maybe it's not a conspiracy theory because the people do not believe anymore. Many people do not believe anymore or try to suppress and to deny the fact that the state didn't function at all. So I think it's a combination of policy of Labour Party, which was, of course, the trend went on also with more liberal, I mean, neoliberal economic, neoliberal policy in the world, which Israel was cooperating with it and becoming a place for rich people, evangelical people in the West world that had lots of interest in Israel. So it became a state for these people and not a state for its own citizens.
So the next following question, is there something similar to Christian Zionism with a palpable influence and lobbying power on German society? Did these doomsday style ideas leave any notable trace on Christian right in German politics? And is it a mainstream tendency like it is for the American Republicans, or more of a fringe elements?
Well, I think in Germany, after 9/11, not only in Germany, but also in Germany, they started to talk about the Christian-Jewish pact, connection. Like we are friends, you know, Jews and Christians, but actually it's also something colonial, or I would say psychoanalytical. In psychoanalytical language, it's actually something cannibalistic, because actually Christianity was swallowing Judaism. The Jewish Bible is considered to be the Old Testament. For us, for Jews, it's not the Old Testament because there is no New Testament. There is only one Bible, and this is our Bible. But of course, in Christianity, also in the theological thought of Christianity cannot exist without the Jews. Christians need the Jews as the heretic one, the one who are refusing and resisting being converted. They are the bad guys from within, that you need to try to convert them so that they become Christians, but you need them also to resist, because they are the example. You see what happens when you don't convert or when you don't believe in Jesus as the Messiah. And Jews don't believe that the Messiah has come. One of the major ideas is the waiting for the Messiah, that we are not there yet, and that we have to hold the fact that there is no salvation now. There is no life without feeling guilty. Christians try to say, okay, we can get rid of guilt feelings because Jesus took it all on it, and we can promise you life without guilt, for example, or without shame. Jews do not believe in it in a theological sense. So it was also for German interest to adopt this idea of this connection between Jews and Christians in order to isolate Muslims. After Jews were annihilated, there are practically no Jews in Germany. There are something like 200,000 Jews in Germany. This is not even Mannheim. Yeah, if you think about it politically, they have no power. They have a symbolic power, and you can use them. You can instrumentalize them. Most of these Jews are older than 60 years. Most of them came from the former Soviet Union. They were suppressed there. Many of them didn't even know that they were Jews or are not allowed to live that up. And they are disinterested. They belong to the formal organization of the Jews in Germany, which represents only half of the Jews in Germany, because they need the institutions of the Zentralrat der Juden, the High Council of the Jews in Germany. But otherwise, I mean, this High Council of Jews in Germany, they cannot really mobilize these people. When they try to organize demonstrations supporting Israel and all that, with all the money that they invest in there and buses that they bring from whatever in Germany, you don't even gather 1,000 people. So it's nothing. Yeah. But it is the interest of Germany to appropriate this Jewish community, and the General Council of the Jews in Germany is financed by the German state. So of course they cooperate together as long as they have members. That's the problem, that they don't have members and the members are dying or too poor, too little. So they have also a Christian structure, a Protestant structure, this council, the Jewish council, because usually in Judaism, you're not a member of a formal institution. You are like in Islam, you're a member of a synagogue, maybe, or a small community. And if you pay the people that are doing the work, the religious work in this synagogue. You never pay the state. There is no church for Jews. You cannot live Judaism because you are born to be Jew, and that was it. You cannot really live that. So it's a very different theological and spiritual concept. But in Germany, they Germanized, or they made it Protestant. And it means also that the German state is financing a German academical part, like a rabbi school in Potsdam. And they put a lot of money in that in order to do a reforesting. It means after the Jewry of Germany, the liberal Jewry of Germany was burned, actually, and annihilated, they tried to reforest it and they do that by supporting conversion of Protestants to Judaism in a kind of a quickie way, which is not the Orthodox way. So this way, they also try to undo the history and to reforest this Jewry by bringing Protestant people to convert. These are the people that are that become rabbis, and they are sent kind of to German military, to German police to be rabbis there. So German government is investing a lot of money trying to qualify rabbis who are liberal, which are actually Protestant Germans who converted to Judaism, and to send them to the police and to the army. And they praise themselves and say, wait, today 5 new rabbis were sent to the German police and army. But if you look at it with scrutiny, you see there are hardly Jewish soldiers or policemen. that need these services. So it's actually, it's a fiction. And this fiction is done in order to portray Germany as a place where you have Jewish life. So, of course, I mean, there are some Jews here, yeah, but it's minor, it's small. And most of the Jewish life, also when the General Committee of the Jews is trying to organize something like Jewish Festival or Jewish Days in Berlin, many performers or lecturers are coming from Israel because there are not enough Jews in Germany to fill such a program. So it's a kind of fiction, mostly. We are a very small number of people.
In this somewhat going a bit back in German history, and here this covers both East and West, is there any figure similar, for instance, to Marek Edelman? Because I know he's often brought as an example. Maybe his positions are romanticized a bit, because we can criticize some of his things, and he wasn't always consistent and changed throughout his life. But looking at the whole German political or artistic cultural spectrum, maybe even in a more liberal or right-wing direction, do we find any figure or figures who launched from within the Jewish German society a criticism of Zionism in post-war Germany?
Not that I know. I mean, in post-war Germany, until the 2000, the High Commission of the Jews in Germany was a very small organ, very marginal, and was made from of Ostjuden, which means, I mean, Jews that lived in Germany after the war were not the liberal Jews, were Jews that came to Germany because they were in displaced persons lager. Yeah, they were from Poland, most of them, or Hungary, or places like that survived the Holocaust. And the first people that were the head of the German Jewish Council were people like Heinz Galinsky or Ignaz Bubis, who were always identifying and solidarizing with other minorities. So they always mentioned, for example, Roma and Sinti people. It was clear that we are together. In the 2000, it became much more popular to be right-wing in the Jewish formal community. Also before Michel Friedman, for example, he was in the Christian Democrat party, as far as I know. He is now a bit critical, but they are all Zionists. So there is a lot of admiration, I think, and I would say also a complex of Minderheitsgefühle, feeling underestimated or less valued, self-devaluation in comparison to Jews in Israel, because Jews in Israel portray themselves as aggressive, as not people that go to be slaughtered, without resisting, which is therefore a catastrophe for Israel now, what happened in the 7th of October, because they were slaughtered. They were victims. And this is not something that Israelis are used to be. And even if they are, then they are being killed as soldiers, not as civilians in such on a mass attack, like such a massacre. So in Germany, the idea, I don't see any figure which was non-Zionist or anti-Zionist who had such an influence. But this is also because they were hardly Jews, and they were busy with surviving. They were fighting. They lived like Heinz Galinsky or Ignaz Bubis. They lived among their perpetrators. people that were traumatized, it's hard even to imagine how they could live in Germany. I mean, there are studies about it, of also, psychoanalytical studies about raising the children in a world in which you always had the feeling that the safe place is at home and it's dangerous outside. And it's very hard to live like that in a society. And it's not a paranoid idea that it's dangerous outside. That was reality. Yeah, these people lived it as a reality. So it was a very small group that suffered from oppression, antisemitism in a Germany that pretend to be denazified, which was not the case. So it's very hard, I guess, to find people like Marek Edelman. I know these people in Israel, and it has also to do with the fact that, it depends how you survived such a traumatic event. So, for example, families, and we see also children, second, third generation of Holocaust survivors, if they came from families of people who were in concentration camp and had to go through a passive experience, they internalize different things and experience different things. And you see it also in the second and third generation. But if you came from a place for families of partisans, then you have, of course, a different story and a different experience. And you're more like Marek Edelman, that can be a fighter anyhow. It doesn't matter where. Yeah. So I think that the German jury after the war was in general so traumatized, and these were not the people that had such an experience. Most of the Jews that survived the Holocaust in Germany survived it because they were married to non-Germans, or to non-Jews, for example, to Germans Arya, yeah, and therefore they were saved. They could be saved and lived here. Sometimes they left, sometimes they came back to Germany. But, we are talking about 5,000 people who are traumatized.
Okay, now we want to know a little bit about the present days, and which is like maybe from October 7, it will we will try to discuss about this aspect. But I want to more like know about your experience that this one person demonstration that you did in Hermannplatz in Berlin.
Mhm.
And we saw the video, and you at some point you got into the custody of the police, and there was something happened. So, and with this connection to like the present German society, how it's oppressing the freedom of expression, and maybe you can reflect on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I said, when I wrote this article, 2009, in the Taz, afterward, the Jewish community in Berlin was very angry, and they went to the editorial of the Taz and they told them they are not supposed to do something like that again. And at that time, Germany was different. They told them in the editorial, this is our decision. We're not going to consult anyone. We have freedom of press and whatever. So the Jewish community in Berlin organized a podium, a panel discussion, discussing my article. The name of it was, in the print version, is going on foot toes. And I meant this is something very cautious, how Germans are dealing with the Holocaust. But the online version was, I don't even remember it now. Anyhow, something with Auschwitz. And I said things which were quite provocative in this article. I said that an Israeli, if you go through an Israeli adolescence, then you have to graduate sex, being drunk, and in Auschwitz. So it was really like slaughtering or touching a holy cow. And the reaction was according to that. So they put the name of my article with a question, is the red line to anti-Semitism was crossed? And they invited the chief editor of the Taz, and they invited someone from Honestly Concerned or a friend of someone in Honestly Concerned to moderate the discussion, and then someone from the Tagesspiegel and someone from the Axel Springer Verlag, from the Weltzeitung, which is for the Taz really a red light, because there is a lot of fight between these two journals, and they didn't invite me. So they were talking about me. And there were many journalists calling them, the Jewish community, and asking what's going on. How come you don't invite her if you discuss her article? And say, we would also not invite someone from the NPD, the Nazi party. Therefore, we will not invite her. At that time, there was no alternative for Germany. There was no AfD at that time. So they didn't invite me, but there was a group of Israelis that went to this discussion. It was in Oranienburger Straße, in the big synagogue, which is not that active. So today, it's a cultural centrum, and there were many peoples, and among them, they didn't even control that because they live really in a parallel world. There was a group of something like 20 young Israelis. And after the chairman of the Jewish community, Lala Zuskind, who is now the head of something Democracy Forum, that she's the head of a state-financed project that watch demonstration in order to find things that are not democratic, but actually they are watching people, mainly POCs, and reporting on them, and photographing in demonstrations, for example. So she was the head of the Jewish community at that time, and she was opening this discussion, and when it was a defamation against me, because she said that I said something which was anti-Semitic. If I had really said that it was really something anti-Semitic, but I didn't say it. So afterwards, these Israelis stood up. Maybe you can still see it somewhere. Stood up, and everyone was holding a sign of "We are all Iris Hefets" in German and in Hebrew and in English. And they said that until I'm going to come, they are not going to sit. And they were all Israelis and Jews. So they didn't sit, and there was a lot of action in that place, and she didn't really know what to do. So at some point, and all the press was there, because they were invited. So at some point, she called the policemen who are usually standing on the street in order to defend the synagogue. She called them in, and they took these Jews out of the synagogue. So this was in the press, and that was the first time that we really showed some resistance. I wasn't there because I was not allowed. I was in a cafe next to the place, and they organized it with me, saying if they will agree that I will come, then I can come. And they said it also. So after after this defamation, the chief editor of the Taz left, and only men stayed there to try to discuss. And the people that stayed in the hall and were not taken by the police disturbed all the time, and it became a farce. All this thing. I lost trace. What was the question? Sorry.
No, also like
about the situation today, exactly. So this was part of the oppression. This is one of the starting points, I think. But at that time, the editorials were still resisting. With time, they gain more and more power, the people that are oppressing. And it was clear that that's starting to do really cleansing of the press, of the art scene. So, and in Germany, if you want to be an artist, you need state funding. So artists started just not to say anything. I know that many people are reading the Instagram and the Facebook of Jewish Voice of Peace, for example, Germany. Yeah, but they will never do any like or share it because they are afraid. I know also people in the academy that are reading that, because, you know, we are also translating things and showing things that are not shown in the main or mainstream media here. But people are very afraid. So it started like that, and every time that something gets out of control, they oppress more and more. Like with the Documenta, for example, you know, because it was a decision many years ago, and suddenly comes all these POCs from the global south that one tries to think that they do not exist, and you see that they do exist, and they have their own ideas and minds, and you cannot control them. The German state needs to control them, and what they control is the mainstream media, the art scene, but and politics, of course, but they cannot control the social media that much. They cannot control the street. So then they started to control the street, because before 2021, it was very easy to have a demonstration in Germany, and it was the big party. All POC were there. Palestine is the case for all global south, people from Syria, people from, you know, queer, whatever. And then many people felt that they are left out, because it was clear that if you're afraid to be pro-Palestinian, you cannot go there, but the party is there. So then they started to say and to propagate the idea that these are anti-Semitic demonstration. At the same time, we saw, you know, during Corona time, or in German parliaments, sitting, you know, anti-Semites, not people on the streets, people in the power, people in general autonomy are anti-Semites. And when it comes to crimes like the NSU murders, or the terror attacks in Halle, in Hanau, these were all white Germans with, you know, post-Ari society, kind of, and they are not controlled like that. So there is a big oppression of the street and the places where they try to control, and they know, the German institutions know that they cannot control it through the law, because it's against the constitution. So they try to control it in soft laws, like the anti-BDS resolution. It has to be a resolution that becomes a soft law, and then you can work with it like a soft law. But it's against the constitution, for example, to prohibit demonstrations. But it was prohibited, first of all, if Palestine or a Palestinian organization did it, and then it became to Jewish Voice of Peace, was also prohibited. So it was clear. I mean, I went to the street after a demonstration that we actually organized and wanted to have in Oranienplatz in Kreuzberg was forbidden. So I talked with two law professionals and also activists that I know. I have some connections there also through family. And I asked them, what is the law? What says the law? Can I stand alone if it's prohibited, if it's not allowed to have an assembly? And it was only for pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Yeah, if you wanted to have a pro-Israel demonstration, you could do that. Yeah, no problem. That was not prohibited by the state. So I asked, what is the law? What says the law? What is the constitution says about it? And they told me, well, if I'm standing alone, it's not a demonstration. It's not an assembly. It is controversial whether if two or three people, it's clear that three people is already an assembly, but two, it's not clear. But if I'm standing alone, then I'm covered by the law, and it doesn't matter actually what is written on my sign. I'm allowed to say whatever I want according to the constitution, because there is a freedom of speech. So I decided I work in Neukölln, and all my patients are also migrants. It doesn't matter where from, from all over the world. They are POC, and I saw how much hate speech there is against migrants in general. But of course, we are not talking about migrants that came from Scotland or the USA. It's about POC, Black people Muslims, of course, and these bad Arab guys in Neukölln, yeah, which is where many Israelis are also living. Most Israelis in Berlin live either in Prenzlauer Berg or in Neukölln, and they came to Neukölln because they wanted something like home, but without the Israeli oppression, Israeli Jewish oppression. So I didn't believe. I still don't believe that people in Neukölln or in Sonnenallee, of course, are hostile to Jews because they are Jews. So I decided to go to Hermannplatz, in a place where and say explicitly that I'm a Jew and Israeli and I'm opposing the genocide in Gaza. I also decided that I will do that by myself because I'm privileged, because I'm Israeli, and therefore I'm protected by the police. I'm Jew, and I'm a woman. If I would be a young male, even if I would be a Jew and Israeli, but I would be a Yemenite or a Moroccan Jew, then they wouldn't treat me like they treated me. So of course I knew that I was privileged also for not being also a young woman. I have white hair that helps also in such occasions. So I decided to do that and to say explicitly what is my opinion about the things that are going on, and say that also as a Jew and an Israeli, also because I wanted to show that, which was forbidden for us, to show that not all Jews are the same, first of all, and not all Jews are represented by the major council of the Jews here in Germany, and not all Jews are like what Germans want them to be. Germany wants us to be the good Jews according to their fantasy, which is the Jew that forgave them or forgives them, the Jew that gives them a kosher stamper and tell them that they are good and that we are going together to fight against the Muslims or the bad guys. They're outside our white community after they killed most of us. So therefore I decided to go to Hermannplatz, of all places, in the middle of Neukölln. And I went with a sign, and the police was doing the police was doing the job. I didn't do much, it became viral, but I thought, what have I done? Yeah, I didn't do such a big thing, I was just standing there with a sign. So immediately 3 policemen came to me and told me that I have to take it down. And I said that I don't understand why, I need an explanation. And then when they saw that I'm starting to argue with them, 2 other policemen came, so we were 5. And then many other people came and look, because, they already photographed me and tried to show the policemen that it's being filmed, and they were curious also to see what's going on there, because the Hermannplatz is a dead place now. The police conquered it. There are many police there. It's not a place for the public. They really killed the place, which was very vivid. So there was life again a bit. And they told me that I'm not allowed to do that, and I wanted an explanation. And they told me there is an assembly, a prohibition, and I told them it's not an assembly. I'm standing here on my own, and I learned how it is in the German constitution, and I'm not going to go away from there until they will explain me why is it forbidden. And they told me, well, it's forbidden here, and it's forbidden now. And I told them, well, I consulted with law professionals. And German law, you have for every centimeter a law that defines who's going to take the snow in the winter from this corner. And it's very defined, there is no now or here or whatever. It should be defined. So if it's prohibited to stay, then I want to know where is it prohibited and where is it allowed, and when exactly is it prohibited and allowed. Then they will tell me, where is it allowed, and I will go to the place where is it allowed if it's forbidden here. But I want to know it. So at some point they saw that there are many people coming, and it was uneasy for them because, I wrote that I'm Israeli and a Jew. And I didn't have any Palestinian flag or kafia, which was forbidden. I would just, I just held a sign. So at some point they saw that they cannot control it, and they took me to police custody. And they put me, that was of course new experience for me, I'm not used to see a police vehicle from inside. And there are small cells in there. So they just locked me in a small cell. And next to me, there was a guy that was cursing in Arabic. And, as an Israeli citizen, I didn't learn Arabic, although it's actually my mother language, but it's considered in Israel to be the language of the enemy. So most Arab Jews didn't give it to the next generation, or they talk Arabic only in the family. But it was not the case in my family. So all the Arabic I know is only curses. So I understand what he was cursing. And I knew that it's a bad language. It's very angry. And he was knocking on his cell. It's all metal. So it was very noisy. And I was there. I had still in my head my mobile phone with me. And I told him I would like to call my lawyer, the one who with whom I consulted also. So I told him that I'm there, and he told me that he's arriving. At some point, they took my mobile phone, and I was just there. There was a camera directed to you, and since I'm psychoanalyst and I know how is it to work in psychic stressing situation. It was not that bad for me because I could calm myself and being in touch with my, I would call it, inner world and reality, and not losing that. And I knew that the guy that was next to me was in danger. I wasn't, actually. At some point, he was spitting all over the cell and the camera, and they were stressing, and they didn't want that something happened to me. So they start to open the cell also and to see that I'm okay, and ask me whether I would like it to be open or closed. They didn't want that something will happen to me, to a Jewish old lady under police custody. Yeah, that was quite clear. It was a man and a woman also there, young men and women. And I told them at some point, it's not good for you to work under these violent conditions, to be exposed all the time to violence. And I know it also from my experience. It can cause, panic attack if you are exposed to that all the time. Panic attacks and fears and erection problems. So at that point, the man was laughing and told me, "I like you. You remind me of a mother, of a friend of mine." So we started, to talk to each other. Then came one officer, and he wanted to have to verify my identity. So of course I had my Israeli passport with me. I took it from home, not any German document, and I gave him my Israeli passport. And he told me, it's not allowed to have pro-Palestinians demonstrations here. So I told him that it's not a demonstration, first of all, and it's allowed according to Constitution. I was alone there. And actually the assembly was their assembly. They came. And second, that it's not pro-Palestinian, it's pro-Israeli, actually. My family lives in Israel, in the south of Israel, and I'm worried about them. And I think it's also for Israel a catastrophe. I knew it wasn't a shock for me what happened on that horrible Saturday, because if you are not denying the situation there, that you cannot oppress. This is also my work. You cannot oppress aggression without, in reality, without, if you shut the door to this aggression, then it will come from the window, and if you will shut the window, then it will crack your house. There is no way to avoid it. No, there is no one in the world that could oppress people without experiencing resistance. This is how our unconscious works, actually. So I told him that that it's a pro-Israeli act what I did now, and he left. And then the two policemen that stayed with me started to talk with me about the situation in Israel, and they were sympathizing with me, actually. After a while, the police, and I told them also, okay, the people left, you can let me go. That was the issue actually. It's not that you don't know the law. You know exactly how the law here is. And at some point, after a while, the officer came back and he told me, yes, I mean, they apologized. They told me that I'm right, that I can do that. But they do that, they put me there in order to secure me because it's not secure, it's not safe for me to stand there. So I told them, I don't think so. But if they think that it's not safe, then it's their task actually to take care that it will be safe for me. They are not, that's the task of the police, not to prohibit me to fulfill my rights. Their task is to take care that I can fulfill my rights as a Jew, as a woman, as an Israeli, as a human being in this citizen, in this place. So they told me that they it was kind of, they didn't want to lose face. So they told me that they will accompany me to another place in Hermannplatz. I'm not allowed to stand in the center, but in the corner. So I said, fine, I'll go with you. Actually, I stood in a better place afterwards. And then they I stood there with my son, a sign for 1.5 hours, and they were standing there, and I got either indifference from people who just ignore me, but mainly lots of love. People hugged me, people thanked me for standing there, people from all over the world, from Japan. A German white guy came to me and asked whether he can take a photograph. He told me that he's married to an Egyptian woman. She cannot go out of the street now. People from Syria came to me, from Iran, hugged me, took my contact, and it got out of control. This film, I got reactions from Iran, from Norwegian, from the Netherlands, people who know me from the States called to ask whether I'm okay. I was really amazed how it works, mainly I think through Instagram. Twitter. There was a Palestinian guy there who also took pictures of that, and through Twitter it was all over the world, because it was showing that even a Jewish Israeli old woman was arrested by the police at the time. They didn't know that I was in custody. And that Germany, this big democracy, Germany, who protects Jews. So I think therefore it went viral, because it was like Russia. In Russia, people stand with a white sign and not able to say something. So it shows how much Germany is disturbed when things are getting out of control. And that was getting out of control because they prohibited, they try to neglect or to deny reality. They close the door, they shut the windows, and then some old lady is cracking the house, out of the blue. So I think this is why it became also viral and maybe a bit unease for them. Also, I never got, I was interviewed by Korean radio from Korea, yes, from the Netherlands. I was asked Norwegian, many places, that I didn't even know that they are interested in what's going on in Germany. Washington Post, yeah. Also, but I got no one from German press that wanted to talk with me, because we in the Jewish Voice for Peace, we are boycotted by German press because we support BDS, because we support peace, because we support the Palestinian struggle, and we are not the good Jews that they want. They want their own Jews, and we are not people that they can control. The good Jews they can control. They are the Jews that are fitting the German needs and image. And of course, these good Jews for the German, they are splitting between minorities and in the minority group. And of course, when you do that, then it means that you have to live with fear. If you are cooperating with a power So if, for example, you are the son of a father who is acting like a mafia head, like a mafioso, and he say, I will give you all the money and not to the other brother and sister. So this father creates loyalty to him. But of course, if you are the chosen son that is cooperating with this mafioso, you know that you have to deal with the mafioso and you are always attached to him, and you are in complicity. You are a complicity of this tyrannic dictator father, and you have to be loyal to him. And the moment that he will dislike you, or you will not be the preferred son, that you will get rid of you and you will take another son or sister. So it means that you have always to live with fear, which is the fear that people who are cooperating with power, like the Jewish councils or Ahmad Mansour, or many POCs that are working, or like Malcolm X called them the house slaves. Yeah, you have the price that you pay if you go with power is to live in anxiety. It's unavoidable. You cannot avoid it, yeah, because you entered into a mafia structure and you cannot get out of there, yeah, because you were complicity. The moment you robbed together the bank, yeah, or you said, okay, I'm willing to do this bank robbery or to act against my brothers and sisters and to get all the money from you, bad father, yeah, that means that you created enemies to yourself under your community, your brothers and sisters. So you have to stay with his bad father, and you lose sisterhood and brotherhood, and you're afraid that this father will leave you, and then you are left with nothing. That's the price. I think that the majority of German population is actually not pro-Israeli. Otherwise, you don't have to oppress so much and to organize such a state being, theater about solidarity with Israel. Of course, I mean, when something like that happens, like this massacre of Hamas, then it evokes pictures in the mind which are horrible for many people. And of course, that for German white people, it's much easier to identify with Israel or with Israelis, because they see white persons. It's like with Ukraine, but it's not that the German media is also forcing that. This is what we see always in the media. Yeah? When we see black people, we see them, starving, and they need money, and they are doing sport. But if we see people in the media who are going to a party, usually they will be white people and blonde and whatever, and it will be like our children. So I guess it's easier for them to identify with white Israeli, and also the fiction of Israeli, because Israel is not white at all, but this is the way it is framed here and perceived here in Germany. I think it's also clear they still try to show that the protests and the demonstrations are violent, anti-Semitic, and whatever. And if it's not work, and this is also what is the Israeli army is doing, every time that there was a non-violent action of Palestinians, struggle of Palestinians, they turned it into a violent one. Because they took provocators, they started to shoot, and all that. This is also what the police is doing. So I saw now, for example, the report about the big demonstration that was yesterday in Berlin. So the numbers are downplayed. I was there. There were more than 10,000 people. They downplay that. They show mostly Palestinian faces. They didn't show how many Jews and Israelis were there, and there were many. People who also said that we are that. It was organized by the Jewish Voice of Peace. They talked with our chairman, but it was very marginal. And the framing is also what the police is saying before, how they are preparing, and afterwards they are quite happy with what was happened, but he always framed in a police context. How can we police these people and control these people? So this is the beginning and the end of the story always. And this way you can frame POC people as violent people who need to be controlled. This is the wild, instinctive, all the cliches and the stereotypes that we know in racism about the black person that you need to control, like your instinct. It's not, that has these hot traits that we have to control. So I think it's my reflection on that is that really the POC people in Germany are doing really an enormous inner work in order to stand all that, because it's really it's hard to maintain psychically yourself in a as a minority, also in a racist environment, and remind yourself all the time that you are normal and that you're okay. And such demonstrations, it was really empowering for me to be there yesterday, but also to do my one-person act. After that, I did the day after and did it again. And a day after that, a colleague of mine from Jewish Voice of Peace went there and did it. And she called me afterwards and she told me, Iris, how didn't you tell me before to go and do something like that? It was gorgeous. I got so much love. I could breathe. Yeah. And I think yesterday was also, and this is why it is so important also to have these demonstrations, because then we can breathe. And then you don't have the feeling that you have to apologize for that, to condemn that, to be that, to do that in order to talk. You could just talk and be yourself. And that's, I think, very important. And I think that POCs in Germany has to do more and more things like that, to invite also white people. There were many white people yesterday, which was also very good for me and relieving to see. They also protect us, of course, from police violence. So we need them there. And I think there are also many white people that considered POCs in Berlin, for example, as an enrichment. And they would like also to be with us. But we need them. I think it's important that they know that we need this support as minorities, and that it's important that we will not let us to be splitted. Yeah. Is it okay? I need to go now. If we can do it, we can do it like that. Really, I like your work. It's nice for me, to talk not to mainstream German media. It's great. We can go through it and try to work with what we had. If you need more, we can fix another time.
Yeah, sure.
Okay?
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's perfect to end it here. Thank you for your time.
Yeah? Okay.
And have a
Thank
nice
you.
time. Yeah.
Unrest
Bye-bye.
And of course, when it's ready, whenever you need me.
Yeah.